All right, friends, it looks like we're live. We're going to just double check here to make sure everything is connecting. Welcome. I am Noah from Hacking Hollywood. Today we're going to be talking a little bit about a new piece of gear that Blackmagic just announced. It is the ATEM Mini Pro. I'm going to be doing a live demonstration today. I got it in the mail and it's kind of early on in everything going on, but I wanted to kind of show you that in real time. It kind of surprised me, to be honest with you, because usually when you put things on order for Blackmagic, it might take a couple weeks, it might take a couple months. Their timeline isn't always the best. But today, we're going to go ahead and get to it and do some unboxing. So before I get started here, feel free, if you have any comments or questions, leave them in the chat. I will be monitoring that as we go. That way, if you have any questions about the ATEM and what it does, I am currently using the ATEM Mini, my current desktop switcher, I guess you can say. I have a separate field switcher, which is actually behind me here. This is the Production Studio 4K, which I absolutely love, and I also have an ME2, which goes in my larger rack that I use for larger projects. So I am noticing too on my computer that I'm going to go ahead and drop the backup recording because it's over processing my computer. I'd rather do this live anyways, and hopefully everything goes well with the stream. That's what's interesting about doing stuff live, is stuff happens. So if you've been following my channel at all, sorry I've been kind of dormant at times. I have a lot of things going on in life, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go throughout the stream. But yeah, so let's jump into it. So we have our ATEM Mini here. This version is the Pro, obviously, and so we're going to go ahead and unbox this. And as you can see, it is completely brand new, still sealed. So let's get right into it here. I'm going to pull over some scissors and make sure to find a decent way to open this without scratching the heck out of everything. So now, a little bit about what I do. I do corporate communications for a living right now. I've been in and out of the Hollywood scene, so to speak, for about 7.5 years, working on different TV shows and that kind of stuff. And live video has always caught my attention, always been something that I've been a part of or interested in high school and college, shooting sports, shooting news, shooting live entertainment shows, and a switcher is a huge part of that process, absolutely. And so to see the technology grow and the involvement into what switchers are today is pretty crazy. So, okay, so as I open the ATEM Mini Pro, we have the traditional welcome kind of docket here. Standard instructions. My rule of thumb on instructions is skip it unless you have to use it. I don't know if that's good or bad. Now, one thing to note is there used to be in this manual, in the setup, a SD card, and now that no longer is shipping, so you have to download it online. And I guess no cloud cost, no license fees. I don't know if this is the full version of DaVinci Resolve or just the light. It looks like it might be the full version with this ATEM. So that would be a huge perk if you're into that. Now, as somebody who's been on Premiere Pro for almost 10 years now, I have to say I gave DaVinci a little bit of a whirl a few times, and despite the learning curve of trying to understand how it all comes together, I actually really like the program. So okay, so we have this box here. This probably conceals cables or whatnot. Pretty standard for Blackmagic setup. I'm going to go ahead and carefully pry this open. There we go. Gotta love that ADR happening there. I'm going to dump these right in the box so you can see. Or I'm going to try to at least. Yeah. So, standard power cable with these minis. These are a 12 volt power, if I remember correctly. Let me double check that so I'm not miscommunicating anything here. Let's see. Yep, 12 volts, 3 amps or less. Even though the input current is 100 to 240 volts and 0.9 amps max. So that could be useful if you don't always use the same cable if you are on the road and keep a separate power in your travel kit per se. So Okay, this is what you've been waiting for. This is what I've been waiting for here. This is the ATEM Mini Pro in all its glory. So, right off the bat, I can see it's fairly similar to, what am I saying fairly? It's almost identical to the ATEM Mini that I'm using currently. Obviously, the Pro version has a couple of the extra features here, and we can go ahead and talk about what the differences will be. I do have a power thing to plug in here, and I am in California, so I'm going to find the correct plug here and get it going. All right. So, pardon my mess for a second there. So these plugs do have this kind of twist bayonet set up, so you could just plug it straight in, right, and that be fine. But there is the ability here to also twist this in case you wanted to keep it from getting unplugged, which is kind of helpful, I would say, in times for sure. So with this power, we're going to go ahead and slide it on like so. Oh, had it backwards. Only goes one way. There it goes. Nice, beautiful snap there. And so I'm going to try to attempt this with my switcher that I'm currently using because it's the ATEM Mini versus the ATEM Mini Pro, so you can actually see, hopefully, a side-by-side of the two switchers. So ATEM Mini, you can see in this area, there's the missing buttons compared to this ATEM Mini Pro. There's also a video out section here, so this can tell you, you can basically punch in what you would like for that. So this is M/V program, and then 1, 2, 3, and 4, so you can actually pull up each one of your individual cameras or inputs, right, depending on which one of the 4 inputs you have to see that on your program out, or on your, it's really what are they calling, an auxiliary out. So it's not a program out, it's an aux out, so you can choose what goes on that source. So key button's the same, but the disc recorder is separate. So let's talk a little bit about what the original ATEM Mini was and is, and what it can do, and what extra features are on the ATEM Mini Pro. So with the ATEM Mini, you have 4 HDMI inputs. That's the same on this Pro. I'll just pick it up because it's more convenient for me. So you do have 4 HDMIs that can be plugged in, and then there's an HDMI out. Same on, that's what the Mini has, this is what the Pro has. That's why it looks so similar. We do have 2 1/8-inch jacks for microphones. So in my particular case, I'm going to jump back to my wide shot here. Oop, too fast. I have an H5, and this is a good stereo recorder, so I'm actually going directly into the computer for a USB interface through that. I have also connected the ATEM Mini from the line out of this recorder so that I can record it directly to the ATEM Mini. And as far as a desktop recorder goes, it's fairly solid. But anyways, I just wanted to show you that. So as we jump back into this here, that's something that you can use with these, with these 2 microphone inputs. HDMI, that's pretty standard on most consumer grade cameras. And so as we keep going down the line here, we have HDMI out. So this is going to be one of the major differences between the ATEM Mini and the ATEM Mini Pro. So the Pro now has a true multi-view. So this allows us to see all of the sources at the same time. You'll get them all on the same on the same screen, I should say. That way you can monitor your 4 inputs at the same time. The current ATEM Mini does not have that feature, and so there's been hacks or workarounds, I guess you can say, where somebody's splitting the HDMI signal. I tried that. I didn't like it. It was bulky, and that's what's nice about the portability of these little guys is it's so small and so light that having those splitters on this thing was just a headache. And so I didn't fuss with it. I got rid of the splitters, and I just went without the multi-view. And yes, you can manage, but it's one of those luxuries, one of those things. It's like, can you do without AC in a car? Yes. Would you prefer to have it? Absolutely. So I'm sure that's not the best analogy, but that's just the one I'm using for now. So yeah. Okay. So keep going down here. we have our USB out, so that's a USB-C connection. So that's the same on both. We have our Ethernet cable, so that's how these communicate with the computer, is through these ATEM controls. Obviously, the USB is also something that talks to the computer. In this case, for the ATEM Mini, both the Pro and the Mini have basically a capture setup. So the ATEM currently talks to my computer, and so it translates the signal from HDMI to something the computer can understand. And so I'm going to jump over to the Blackmagic website here, just so we can talk about the ATEM Mini and the setup that is there. So previously on, let's go back to the home page here. Can I do that? Yes. So introducing the new ATEM Mini, of course. So previously on the ATEM Mini, the normal one, not the Pro, basically you just had it as a USB interface. And so I was really excited to have the switcher plus that interface, because before I would have my main switcher, which is the ATEM TV Studio Pro 4K. These names are crazy. I can't stand them. Anyway, you would have that device, plus you would have to have a separate capture card of some sort. So there's Elgato capture cards, there's PCIe capture cards, and then in my case, I was using what's called a web presenter. So if we jump onto the Blackmagic website, we'll go to the web presenter. That's what this looks like. So basically, either one of these new ATEM Minis will take care of that extra step. So you will not need a Blackmagic web presenter if you have one of these minis, because it can capture directly to the computer. Now, it could still be valuable to you to have a web presenter or even an Ultra Studio, which I'll show you on this next tab here. These Ultra Studios, because these Ultra Studios have hardware compressors instead of software. So what does that mean in layman's terms? It basically means that your computer is going to work less hard to capture or to bring in that information so that it can understand it. So instead of the computer transcoding it or creating it into H.264, there's a built-in hardware compressor built into the Ultra Studios. Now with the new ATEM Mini Pro, that hardware compressor is also built into the ATEM Mini Pro. So that's a huge deal if your computer is getting overtaxed. In my current case, I just said this earlier, I'm using Wirecast as my encoding software. So having a stream plus a recording of this broadcast was actually pushing my computer a little bit too much for my comfort zone. So I went ahead and stopped the backup recording for now, but the ATEM Mini Pro is going to help take care of some of those extra strain that the computer has on it. Okay, so back at it. I'm sorry for all these detours, but they are necessary for what these features actually mean for the ATEM Mini. So we've gotten through the interface there. So these top buttons are pretty much all identical through really up until here. So pretty much, closer shot here, all of the buttons are the same up until this very last section. And so you still have the fade to black button, which I'm not going to press because we're live. But let's talk about kind of what all of these buttons do and how it's set up. So if we were just on the Mini, like I said, up to there, so let's talk through the same functions here. So you have the microphone input. So you can plus or minus by 3 decibels. So that adds or subtracts gain, essentially, to your ATEM input. So if you had a microphone and it was too quiet, you can quickly boost it or lower it. When you go into the ATEM software, that does affect it there, so we can talk about that in a minute. I guess I skipped over the more important button, which is on or off. So if you kind of glance down at my ATEM, you'll see that mine is currently off. And the reason for that, like I said, is the H5 is going through the USB interface. So both of my microphones are turned off, so we're going to go ahead and kind of skip over that top section there. So then we have these controls down here. And so audio follows video, which is another audio button. We have a reset button here. I think that has to do with the shading and the picture profiles and that kind of stuff. And we also have an on and off button, which honestly, these buttons down here for most users, you won't have to fuss with too much. So I'm not going to mess too much with these buttons, because really what it's all about for me are the hard cuts, right? The numbers here. And I said hard cut, that's the wrong term, but these buttons here is what I mean. So currently my ATEM is set up, my Mini is set up so that I have green as my preview, so you won't see that as a difference. And then I also have the red as the program. And so that is a traditional way of a broadcast switcher and how it works. The ATEM Mini, when it ships, and the Pro, they have a Buscut system. So as you press each one of these buttons, it automatically cuts for you without having to preview it. So a traditional broadcaster may prefer, or somebody who has switching experience might prefer the preview cut setup, but it's really up to you and what you have set up. So actually, now that I've said this out loud, I don't know which software is built into the ATEM Mini, or which setting I should say. You can toggle that on or off as far as that switching process goes, which I'll show you in a second. So that kind of covers pretty much all of these buttons. Again, these buttons here, I haven't gotten into too much, so sorry for my ignorance on there. Maybe I'll come back with a follow-up to talk about that more. So as we go down the line, 1, 2, 3, and 4 are your inputs. You also have the ability to do black. So if you wanted to fade to black, even though you have that here, or use black as a frame, you can also take a still shot of one of the inputs or what have you. And then we come over to this duration section here. So I'll come in closer so it's a little easier to see. So we have 0.5, 1, 1.5, and 2. So those are a quick way of selecting one of those. Let me show you what it looks like here. So you see how it dissolves between the two camera shots. That's at a 0.5 rate. This is a 1 second rate, so it takes a little slower. And let's jump up to a 2 second, and I'll use that 2 second fade between the two shots. So that kind of just shows you what the duration is, and that's when you press the auto button, which is the auto fade between the two. Now on the larger, there I am, on the larger switchers, there is a bar, and an interesting about that bar thing about that bar is that the Star Wars movies back in the 70s used the shot of that bar to go to oh my gosh, hyperspace. I'm sorry, I'm ruining all this fun information because I don't know the terms, but you know what I'm talking about. Okay, so then we have our effects, or transitions between each one of the shots. So if we wanted to, we can do something fancy where we kind of crossfade there between the shots. I like it simple, so I just like the dissolves between the two. You can also dip, so we can dip to white or what have you, depending on the color you choose. That's the dip button there. So again, I tend to keep it pretty simple and not worry about that. So there's also a key feature. So this is interesting. Both the Mini and the Pro have the keyer function built in. So that is really helpful depending on what your shots are, what your setup is. If you have a setting where you don't have a background behind you that you want to show and you want to key it out and be at the beach or somewhere cool, that keyer is a big help to that. So now we're talking about the new buttons. We're finally there. This is the Pro buttons that are now included in this particular switcher. We have our nice red record button, and so this is one of those functionalities that's new. There's a stop button right below it and a record button on top. So basically you can plug in, instead of plugging this plugging this ATEM directly to the computer, you can plug in a hard drive and record onto that hard drive. I hope that this also supports a USB splitter, essentially a dongle of some sort, so that we can go to the computer plus record. So I don't know if I'll be able to fully test that demo today. I'm just doing the unboxing in this video, but look for a future video on my channel to actually show that in action, essentially. So yeah, so we have those recording buttons there. So we also have on our on-air and off-stream. So this is where it gets a little bit more complex, I guess you can say. So not only does the Pro have a built-in hardware encoder like we talked about for the Ultra Studios, but now the software and there's a streaming protocol. Basically, the software is built in to the switcher Blackmagic world. And so instead of using a program like OBS, Open Broadcast Software, or in my case Wirecast, there is now a built-in function to the ATEM control software so that you can stream out of this device without having to touch a computer. So once it's configured, once it's set up, you can basically stream with just an internet connection for wherever you are. So it's really, really interesting how that's set up, because it creates this portable rig where you can have even more flexibility and more ability to be on the go. And so that's what that function button does there. So we can basically turn off or on our stream. And we already talked about our multi-view output, which is that aux out, so you can send the specific sources there. So I'm going to go ahead and jump over to see if we have any questions or thoughts so far. I guess before I do that, it should come back to me here. But yeah, so that's kind of the quick overview of the ATEM Mini and the unboxing, or ATEM Mini Pro and the unboxing, I should say. Yeah, thanks for watching, and let me know if you have any questions about it. I'll answer it in the comments. Have a good rest of your day.